Don't stand in front of the speaker.
Well,
Yeah, that's better.
the tech guys are let us know what to do. So Janet from Inuvik wrote in, and she's a member of the Inuvik greenhouse, and she says, I also have raised beds at home outside. Soil nutrient deficiency is a common theme amongst the panelists and commenters. It's taken us a few years at the greenhouse to get a compost system going, but we're harvesting beautiful material. It's not enough to distribute to the community at large. We need a municipal compost facility. How did the Yellowknife compost facility get started?
She got cut off at the end of it.
She got cut off. So anyway, I think she was asking how did the Yellowknife compost facility get started. So I guess Shannon Ripley is actually in the audience. Do you want to answer this, Shannon? Or?
Yay!
I'm so sorry, Craig. I only caught the end. I was just chatting to Margaret at the back.
How did the Yellowknife compost facility get started?
From Inuvik?
No,
Yeah.
question
Yellowknife.
from Inuvik.
Right, the
And
question.
don't stand in front of the speaker.
Inuvik is asking how the Yellowknife one got started.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And lovely to hear the question from Inuvik, because I know that there's people involved with their community gardens who've been really active in composting. And I wanted to congratulate them because I've heard, I think 2 years ago they had at their community garden composted, I believe, a ton, like an actual ton of materials. So the Yellowknife centralized composting facility got started in 2007. There were 2 board members with Ecology North who, as volunteers, wrote a proposal that they took to Environment and Natural Resources to obtain a little bit of funding to hire 2 people or a person to do a feasibility study and to explore what would be the options or how could the city go about starting centralized composting. And the idea had come from partly from a solid waste audit or a study into how much garbage was being produced in Yellowknife in 2007. And that was a project that the city had undertaken, and it showed that 26% of what was being put into the garbage in Yellowknife was organic materials that could be composted. And one of the main recommendations from that study was that it would be really helpful if the city explored centralized composting as a way to remove all of those materials from the waste stream and convert them into a resource, which now through the program they call Black Gold, that's being sold to residents. So that feasibility study, or just that exploration of options, was undertaken in 2008. My friend and colleague Catherine McKenzie and I were very fortunate to have been hired by Ecology North at that time, and I just moved here and was super interested in composting and had the wonderful fortune of having the opportunity to work on that project. After the study was done, it was done in really close collaboration with staff at the City of Yellowknife, exploring where the site could be adjacent to the landfill and how it could use equipment from the landfill, and the staff working with the city, where the materials would come from, talking with businesses that might be interested in participating in the program. So just kind of exploring how that could work. And then following that, Ecology North worked very closely with the city to then obtain a little bit more funding in 2008-2009 to then start a pilot project in 2009. And that pilot project, one unique thing about the city program and how it got started is that it started focusing on the business and institutional sectors. So it focused on collecting organic materials, so food scraps mainly, from restaurants, grocery stores, hotels, places that were generating a high volume of materials, but where the organics could be picked up from fewer collection points. So in contrast to now, something that's really exciting is that the program is now expanding into the residential sector. So with a new neighborhood every year for the next 4 years, the program is expanding. But as you can imagine, when you collect from households, you need to have many, many bins. Every household needs a bin, or it's a good way to do it to have every household having a bin to collect. Versus at the beginning, our goal was to have 15 participants, which included places like the Co-op grocery store, the Explorer Hotel, restaurants. So we had fewer collection points, so the cost was lower because we just had a budget for a pilot project, but we could really collect quite a lot of material from those few places. For example, one grocery store was producing literally a metric ton of materials every week that we were collecting just from that one bin and taking out to the compost facility. So yeah, I'm certainly always happy to share more information about how it started. I would say the main things to keep in mind in any community, if you're interested in centralized composting, is that any community of any size and individual can do it. That was something at the beginning that was probably one of the main ideas to overcome, was this idea that we have a long winter, we have a cold climate, can we really do composting here? And it's absolutely possible in any community, not just Yellowknife, all the way up to Sachs Harbor. It's very possible. And there's a lot of materials now available through the Experience in Yellowknife that can be shared. Kim Rapati, who now is working with Northern Farm Training Institute, created a wonderful document this past year that talked about centralized composting successes all across the Circumpolar North. So NWT, Yukon, Alaska, Nunavut, northern Newfoundland, some cooler communities there. So that's a document that's available online through the Ecology North website. So great question.
Thanks very much. I think there's one more question for Doug.
Two, actually.
Yeah, we've got another question here too, but we'll start with one for Doug. I don't even, well, I do need a mic.
No, that's good. You can yell.
Everybody can hear you?
So yeah, great presentation by Doug on farming in Norman Wells, but if the soil starts out so short of nutrients, is it possible to do regenerative farming there? Can the farm produce enough compost and the right nutrient mix? And there's another part to the question. Another comment for discussion here perhaps is, if soil testing and nutrient building is needed, and it was a problem for both speakers so far, how do we keep startup costs from being prohibitive to citizens wanting to enter farming?
What I finally got around to was by using animals to supply the nutrients required for the farm, for the potato patch, basically, other vegetables, but potatoes mainly. And I might have gone about it the wrong way. Maybe I should have started with the pigs first, and perhaps the chickens, because the chickens always bring in revenue. So do the pigs if you're going to be able to slaughter them for the meat. We did farm gate sales with the meat, but people were involved in the butchering and the packaging of the meat too. We used the system that they had in Alberta so that we could get away from some of the health regulations that were required if it wasn't too stringent. If you have what I did is I took the waste from the restaurants, with exactly what they're talking about here, but rather than putting it in a compost bin, which in Norman Wells caused a problem because we had a lot of black bears and the black bears are attracted to the compost bins. Instead, I collect all of the Northern Store best before date when they throw it out that day, whether it's milk, bread, eggs, fruits, vegetables, frozen meats, anything at all, and all that would go to the pigs. There was one restaurant that I utilized and one work camp of probably 40, 50 people in that particular camp. I was getting anywhere from 4 to 8 5-gallon pails of waste a day. I fed all this to the pigs. Now, if you want to compost, you want to see what a pig can do for you. You get it today, it's composted tomorrow. But of course, you're not going to use it until it sits in winter. You maybe mix some other things in it. But it's the fastest method of composting I've ever seen. And at the end of the season, you've got your meat. So the other thing that I did on my garden, like I took the garden itself, and any waste that came out, all the tops that the pig was able to eat. And you have to be a little careful. You don't feed them the pig feed. You don't get into the potato tops too much. But it can affect them, their kidneys. It does something to them. I'm not too sure, but it's not that healthy for the pig. But when it comes to waste potatoes, I had a lot of waste potatoes, sometimes 4,000 or 5,000 pounds if the harvester was doing damage to them. So with the 4 pigs, I could boil 90 pounds of potatoes a day on a wood fire outside. They were just squealing while I was doing the cooking for them. And those 4 pigs could gobble up 90 pounds of potatoes just like you wouldn't believe. Like it was gone every day. I could give them 90 pounds of waste potatoes. So I never really thought I got out of it. So all of this waste that's being generated by the chickens, by the pigs, is being saved up. And now I do have enough that this year I won't have to import anything for the soil. And all that's going to go back on the soil. I'll probably have some to spare. There's a few people that come to get some from me. I don't want it to all go out because I want to use it myself. It's the real McCoy, that material, and it's all produced from waste within the community.
Thanks. I think Frog's going to answer that.
I just wanted to add on a personal note, my solution to nutrient deficiency has been to buy the Hay River chicken manure. There are mountains of it, and it's very decomposed, and they remove the top layers, so there's for weeds and so on. That has been my absolute just wonderful resource. They come in bags, and Graham is right here. He sells that. And what I do in Yellowknife is I've got a large quantities at my house. Just to give you an idea, Graham asked me if he thought people in Yellowknife would be interested in buying bags of chicken manure. And so I have a very long distribution email list, and I pre-sold 457 bags of chicken manure. So Graham was very happy when he came. And I take 1 bag at the farmer's market every week, and I tell people that I will deliver it at their house if they want to, and I do that. And I also collect compost from offices, friends that work downtown, They leave the compost in bags that I buy for them. They leave it in the freezer, and once a week I get my little bag and I do the strip on Franklin, and I go into offices and I get the compost from friends. And Jackie has something.
The other, probably the best fertilizer in the world is from fish. Because it's coming from a different ecosystem, and the skin of fish is very high in nitrogen, the scales have calcium, and the bones are full of phosphorus, and there's potassium in there too. And so if we just started to value that very wonderful treasure, we could have our own fertility maintained within our community, just like you were saying, from these various ways of recycling what we perceive as waste.
Thank you. Is there a burning question from the floor before we move on? I know we're behind time, but if there's a burning question to this panel, Mr. Schwartz.
Yeah, I just wanted to make one comment. Something that people haven't mentioned, but I think in order for sustainability to truly happen, it has to be self-sufficient sustainability. And we've got to get away from making food business. It's got to be the whole community involved, everybody processing food. And it's really hard to relate what happens, because it relates to all the other things that become self-sufficient in energy and all the other basic food needs. And as far as clothing is concerned, we can grow our own clothes, bamboo and hemp. And I know it takes a while longer to like, I think the programs that you're doing are really good, but we got to work towards getting everybody involved in the communities. And in the big cities, you just have to divide the cities in smaller groups. And then one other thing I wanted to talk about is vertical farming, which is going on in the United States and a lot of the large cities. They're growing food hydroponically, and they're growing tons of food. They take old derelict buildings and have all these vines and plants growing. It's really good to see. And so big cities are becoming self-sufficient, or they're working towards that. And there's 4,000 self-sufficient sustainable communities that have been established around the world, and some of them are in major cities like Copenhagen, so I think that's something we can work towards, and that's what I think this other program should be working into, and educating people. And the thing is, the world right now is in a really critical situation, and we've got to take action and really start getting into the communities and educating people and helping them with these programs.
Good. Thanks, sir. Well, I think let's have a hand for this panel.
I've been asked to put any proposal I might have had onto the internet. I haven't seen it myself, but I did submit a proposal. Anybody that asks me about, can you make a business out of this, I kind of shy away from them trying to make this big super business that will supply all this food to the territories. I'm exactly what you're talking about there. That's my same line of thought. In the communities where you have people that don't have jobs, that are still healthy, that are of an age that can't get out and do the hunting or fishing that needs to be done, but are still in the community and want to do something, those are the people that we should try to gather together to form a cooperative, agricultural cooperative for that community to take advantage of what they can harvest and sell to the community at reduced prices, saving the rest of the community that aren't maybe involved in it on their food costs also. And that's definitely where I promote it from, after seeing how it is from what I've been doing myself.
Okay, good point. Thank you, Doug. Final comment?
Final comment. I think the business model is probably will be based on exports. The world's population is a net gain of 200,000 people a day. 200,000 new customers on planet Earth every single day. So I think the true sustainability is we feed ourselves, and the business model will be based on specialty, high quality, nutrient-dense organic food exported from a pristine, intact environment from Northern Canada.
Good, final point. Thank you.
Same time, just one more.
Thank you. No, sorry, Larry. We have to move on. Sorry. The next panel is going to be talking about storage, distribution. So I think we'll be able to pick up after we hear from the next panel. And the next panel is Sam Bullock. who is co-owner of Bullock's Bistro here, and he's going to be talking to us about fish. Jackie Mill, who's going to be talking about the whole processing, storage, and distribution systems. Craig Scott from Ecology North, who has been working in harvesting birch syrup and has been dealing with some of these issues of processing, storage, and distribution. Come on down. And John Fulford, who's with ITI, and this is the job that he does day to day. So we'll be hearing the kind of work that his department's doing to support food processing, storage, and distribution. And I'm going to ask everybody to be very succinct in their points so that we can have some time for discussion. So, starting off with Jackie, and then we'll go to Sam, and then we'll go to Craig, and then we'll go to John.
Hello, we're back again. So, why can we build a business? I think the business part is an important part because right now we're very dependent on money. And I don't think we're, he wants me to put it in there, I don't know. Which one?
It's for the,
It's
just not the balance of the
okay.
items. That's right.
It won't change. All right, can you hear me good still?
Wait, say it.
All right, okay. All right. So basically, because of that situation, even though we're probably not really happy about being dependent so heavily on money, because the food system that we need to implement will have a high food preservation component, okay? And to have a secure food system, we have to find a way to bridge the winter. A lot of times, the first thing we think about is that we're going to grow food out of season. That's very energy dependent. And so really, we need to look at these niche kind of technologies as supplements and complements to our core food system. And so our core food system will be to grow an abundance of food in season and then store it in a variety of ways. We don't want to put all of our food into one type of system like freezing it or canning it. What happens if something happens to your deep freeze? All your food is spoiled. If you have your food all canned in jars and it freezes, maybe your current can would rupture. So what we want to do is we want to have an element of our food dried. Okay, we want to have an element of our food preserved fresh, like in root cellars. We're going to have some canned, and we're going to have some frozen. Okay, and we might have live animals we're wintering, which is a type of food storage. Living animals are a type of food storage. Okay, now because we're going to have to develop those skills of preserving all the foods, we're going to grow in expertise. And we're going to develop some really cool products. One that we're working on is a northern ketchup that has got tomatoes, onions, and wild rose hips. And it's phenomenal how similar the rose hip is to complement the ketchup. And so this is just an example of what we could call a niche product. And so we could focus on, and so that, so the sales element, that's one for distribution, and that could go far. We could export it to other countries. But feeding ourselves within the north is probably going to look different, and we're going to need to concentrate on the strengths of each region. And so where there's land for, say, producing more domestic animals, of course, we want to encourage those systems. And then as we go further north, basically the food systems are going to become very nurtured, steward spaces. And the important thing to remember is if we can build an environment that can keep people alive, but that technology can be used to grow our food. So if people can live there, plants can live there. There's going to be water, there's going to be infrastructure there. And as we go further north, we're going to focus and concentrate on what we grow, okay? And it'll be probably used more locally. The other, personally, my research has led me to believe that drying of food is probably going to be the #1 way that we can rapidly put food into an easily light, transportable form that is not vulnerable to being frozen. Once food is dried, it can be frozen. It doesn't need energy to maintain its storage. And normally, food, once it's dried, is 10 times lighter. Okay? And then, of course, so depending on the market, we're going to concentrate on different methods of food preservation. And it's the more you value add something, your profit goes up almost 10 times. Even to grow food, say you had your own kiosk at the farmer's market, and you were to take raw food and have a little food business, I don't think there is a more profitable way than that. And lots of farms will do that. They will go from farm to table and their own farm business. That is the most profitable. And so we're going to want to encourage local cooks to use local produce, because that's going to have the largest, fastest impact on having revenue to go back into building a food system. So it's going to be diverse. Diversity leads to security, so there isn't going to be one single path. But that's probably, I think, they want to catch up on time, so.
Good, thanks,
Yeah.
Jackie. Good. Here's you. Good.
My name is Sam Boyle. I'm co-owner of Boyle's Bistros in Oldtown Yellowknife. Lois has graciously asked me to come here, add something to this discussion about sustainability. And I hope I can do that. On behalf of the many dedicated, hardworking people in the fishing industry, thank you for the invitation. I was born and raised at a seasonal bush camp called Tree River, approximately 80 kilometers upstream on the south side of the Mackenzie River from the community of Sage. My ancestors on my mother's side are Witchmen, so I was raised in the ways of the once nomadic people who relied on time-honored tradition, knowledge to plan, build, survive, and prosper for tomorrow. Anyone who has experienced living on the land knows the present and immediate needs are not enough. You need to think of tomorrow and prepare for a future need. While in grade school, I spent every summer at the Tree River Fish Camp, and by the age of 16, I was well versed in gathering firewood, preparing moose hides for tanning, collecting dashi, which is the preferred rotting wood for smoking moose hides, berry picking and storage, repairing and setting gill nets, checking fish nets, processing old round fish into select cuts, drying fish, smoking fish to eventual long-term storage. I was listening to Doug talk about his potato venture, and I just want to add that we had a 3-acre potato farm at the Tree River Fish Camp, and one of the photos on the bistro wall shows my father tilling the soil, and I always like to point that photo out because it's really my going back to fishing potatoes. And so we used to mix the offcuts from the fish into the soil there to grow potatoes, beets, cabbage, cauliflower, and I guess now that I reflect back on that particular garden each year, that particular spot was overwashed by the spring high water level, so it was constantly being replenished. by the silt from the river. So the connection with fish for protein and the omega-3 and fertilizer to recycle back to the soil. Currently, I live out at Prelude Lake, just inside the territorial park, and we have a 40 by 60 garden there. My wife Renata does most of the gardening, but we use the fish slime that's generated daily from keeping fish cool. The ice melts and it mixes with this really actually good smelling slime because it is fresh. It doesn't have a smell. And that's one of the things I'm hearing with fertilizers is we don't have anyone to pick up fertilizer waste. We have dog mushers that come to get the scraps, but a lot of that slime, what it does to the soil is it makes it too rich, and it's prohibitive after a while. So you only get one type of plant or one thing wanting to really grow there. And so I dump the slime in our septic tank at home, and it keeps the microbes very happy. And so maybe after this we can get some people to come down and get some fish scraps, because we generate currently about 100 pounds a day that go into the dumpster. Again, you know, there's some precautions to take when you're putting that on your garden, because bears have a way of showing up shortly after. So yeah, there's just some precautions to take, and further than that, it's great stuff. It's miracle grow. So being at the Tree River Fish Camp, we had no AC power, no refrigeration. We dug permafrost cooler pits, and we had no electrical lighting, just a battery transistor radio tuned into CBC to listen to Louis Goose and the Monk Show. Processing and harvesting fish in a bush camp setting has its challenges. However, the techniques used to achieve the finished product are much the same. These traditional practices are being employed every day in communities to varying degrees. And a note of interest, I could read my handwriting here, that we're finding more this season than any other season that some of the fishers that we're getting fish from are catching fish that they don't normally catch in the winter. And when I asked them about this, one fellow said to me, well, that's easy. He said, there's lots of forest fires, so the inland lakes where they should be wintering are too acidic, so the fish stay in the lake, and they become caught where they shouldn't be. They're showing up there. That's kind of an interesting footnote, since we just experienced one of the worst fire seasons in 30 years in NWT. So purchasing and processing fresh fish for a restaurant or retail outlet takes a more structured, manufactured approach. From stainless steel cutting stations, a labeling machine, industrial quality vacuum packing machine, and a walk-in freezer. A dealer in fish license is needed from the Freshwater Fish Marketing Corporation to sell the product locally. Currently, as far as I know, there are no licenses available to export the fish out of the NWT. It sounds a little bit like what the prairie farmers were up against with the wheat board. And so we can't, I know a few fishers. Nancy Buckley comes to mind because she always wanted to sell fish at the Edmonton Fish Market, but she could never do it because of this restriction. We have periodic inspections from the health department to ensure cleanliness, sanitized stations, and fish-only coolers and freezers are maintained at proper temperatures. So I'm just kind of relating a little bit back to cutting fish for our own sale versus locally manufactured sort of tent camp. People that are out fishing and harvesting fish. And as well, we have periodic visits from Department of Fisheries and Oceans to ensure proper record keeping from fishers, species type, total weights purchased, and monies paid. In addition, a signed document outlining the responsibility under the Fisheries Act. Currently, under the Freshwater Fish Marketing Act of 1985, in the sections outlined purpose and powers and the import and export trade, all terms and conditions are set by the corporation. In short, no person other than the corporation or an agent of the corporation shall export fish from Canada, send, convey, or carry fish to another province, buy fish from another province or outside of Canada. So the thought that a micro fish processing plant can be set up by local communities really have a brick wall of regulatory agencies and policies to overcome if sales go beyond the NWT. And on that note, because we all know that only so much can be purchased and used locally, and that exporting to the south to a larger audience is really the way to sustainability equals, staying in the black of the bank. That's really what I'm hearing. And at the community level, people can have access to fresh caught fish, whether it's dried or salted, as well as the byproducts that come from fish, being the bats, the fins, and the slime for composting, as well as there's so many byproducts you can take from fish, because I think that's what cod liver oil is. It's boiled parts of codfish that give you your omega-3. And I've mentioned before that no one collects my scraps, that few do come for the slime occasionally. And the first thing they ask is, how can I keep my cat away from it? Well, fresh fish slime in itself really doesn't have very much of a smell. And so I tell them to dilute it because it's quite thick. And then right after you apply it to whatever you're putting it on, is you water it. And watering it does dilute the smell, and eventually you can keep a pussycat away. Moving on to distribution and shipping. We at Bullocks received many requests to ship fish because we are still of the opinion that we have the world's best fish at our doorstep. But the regulations quickly say that we can't do that. You almost have to come here to enjoy it. And I mentioned that to Dennis yesterday that in January of this year, the country food shipping subsidy was removed. As far as our reaching to get, it's primarily the char product that we're talking about. So we used to buy, I would say, about 4,000 pounds or more of char from Broughton Island. I think it's pronounced. I won't say it. Okay. And so from Broughton Island, we have this one char fisherman who sends us the most beautiful AAA grade char on the planet. And we used to pay about $1.65 a pound for shipping. And that shipping rate has gone up over $4 a pound. So what used to cost a $600 shipment is now just under $2,000. So when the cost of a product starts to encroach on the total that you've spent to buy it, it becomes really hard to be able to sell it. Because if you were to extrapolate those costs onto a plate, it's not within the reach of local people. So what happened was we bought quite a bit less char from him. His solution was to lower the price of the char. And I told him that I would not let him do that because it wasn't his fault that this was happening, but that he should go to his HTA or his MLA or somebody there to say, look, you want us to fish and we need to make a living, but this freighting charges are burying that price. And so what has happened this year is that because of, at this time of year anyway, the particularly foods supplier in Cambridge Bay, which generally we get fairly decent char from, the char has expired best before date because that char was harvested in basically in September. So their freezing methods are great, but what happens to fish is that it slowly starts to decay in the freezer. It looks good, it thaws well, but in my words, it's like filling wet bread because it just falls apart when you try to work it. So our research at the bistro, because people want char, is we've gone to a supplier in Iceland who farms Arctic char, and they have a grade A plus product. The rest of my talk is a little bit about bullets and possibly how we affected the fishery on the Great Slave Lake, because for many years there have been fewer and fewer fishers that have gone out to fish the wonderful fish that come out of there. So to not sound like it's about us, but it's a promoting and supporting of the fish product, which I know that I've affected a few fishers on this lake by providing them with a sustainable income, giving them top dollar for toss fish. And it's in some instances we need to be careful there because you can actually overpay for the fish as well. But getting back to local economies and businesses putting back into the community. Once you've established a relationship with a supplier that you know that is bringing you good product, they become your best friend, and they do everything they can to give you the freshest fish available. So we promote our local fish as the best in the world to our world travel visitors. And in my wife's words, everyone likes fish, no one likes bones. The Asian visitors coming to Yellowknife from December to March have increased drastically. The Chinese visitors have overtaken the percentage in numbers from the Japanese, the Taiwanese, and the South Korean. Since the 2009 Harper trade mission to China, the Chinese government has put Canada back on its preferred destination list. And I think we all need to just look at how many tour buses that we've seen this winter, more than any other winter, have gone out to the Aurora Village. I remember seeing a few years ago it was just one, then it was two, and I think this year they had 5 or 6 full-size buses going back and forth. And so I guess I had this vision of a forecast where I think one of the, and I always wanted to try to entertain this idea to Arctic College about putting together a small course on fishery at the Great Slave Lake. Not just going to get fish, but processing as well. Because there's a lot of facets of not just safely going out there, because the fishermen take their lives in their hands every time they go out on the lake, whether it's in the winter or the summer. But there's a whole skill set that's unseen, I guess, as far as processing the fish, storing the fish. And currently I have one apprentice who's been with me for 18 months, and he's only halfway to proficiency in processing fish. And that's how I am here today. He's having the fish today. And so I think a lot can be done at the local level by the people themselves, because like I said, they're doing it already. They're in their fish camps and they're drying and they're processing this fish. And further to that, I'm sure there's some methods and some ways that could be improved for them to have fish all year available to them without only going to the odd few fishermen that do go out and fish in the winter months. So it becomes like a storage problem where fish is very sensitive, a very sensitive product to store. But I know that if there's enough drive from people, they'll overcome that. I think the other thing, when I think of fish, I also think of water as food. No one has talked anything about water as food, so that's, I guess, just a seed that I wanted to talk about there. Last year, I had the opportunity to visit my son in Japan, in Japan, and we visited the Tsukiji fish pond. And they're not doing anything more or less than anything with the bistro, just on a bigger scale, because they're a small country, and they love their fish, and they sell lots of fish. And that was a bit of an eye-opener, because I've always heard about it, and I've always wanted to know, even without speaking the language. I knew what they were doing and their passion for their product. So we sit on this wonderful resource that's being underutilized in so many ways. Not just that most of the fish leaves the NWT, but keeping it a little more local, keeping it, feeding people in the north. And so I guess on that note, pretty much.
Could I just make a request here? I'm sorry, but can we take a minute to sort out the sound? I just find that straining so much.
It's, yeah,
It's just
quite
like-
quiet mine.
Maybe just closer to the mic?
Yeah, you gotta get
Just
close.
gotta talk.
Yeah, sure, certainly. Is that okay with Dave?
Yeah.
Okay. So my name is Craig Scott. I'm a co-founder of a company called Arctic Harvest with my partner Mike Mitchell. We started about 6 years ago making birch syrup. Mike's a teacher, and he started doing this down in Hay River with his class. And when he moved up to Yellowknife, we decided that we would try to make a go of it as a small business and do it at a bit larger scale. So we started sapsucker birch syrup, and we started kind of growing our own, or like tapping our own trees on land that YKDFN gave us permission to use. And so it's out by on the just past the Better Road. And I just came out of the bush yesterday. We just kind of finished our season. It wasn't a great season this year, but it was it's nice to be out there. So we produce birch syrup. I also harvest morels a little bit, and we also make some teas from dried wild foods, Labrador tea and birch leaves, and all kinds of different things that you can harvest from the forest here. In terms of processing food, obviously we make syrups. We dry a lot of things. And as Jackie said, drying is a really simple and easy way to do things. We have a really dry climate. Things dry really easily here just by putting them out in the sun. And it's an amazing way to make something that's really big and heavy, really small and light, and transportable, which obviously transportation is an issue in the north. So, there's all kinds of other ways you can process food as well, and root cellars are one thing that were talked about by Doug Whiteman. Perhaps we should be starting to go back to those. Community freezers was something we used to have here, and they kind of there's a few still around, but there's not many left. And that may be a model that we should start to think about, is having community freezers back in the communities. In terms of what we kind of do, a lot of the stuff kind of requires specialized equipment. We have a reverse osmosis machine, we have an evaporator, things that we have ordered online. And when we go to package things, we use bottles and things we have to purchase from down south. And it's a bit difficult for it's not the simplest thing to do. But when you go to market your product, if you want to start a small business like what we've done, you need to have like attractive packaging and like attractive labels and things like that. That's the kind of thing that really sells your product, other than the quality of the product. So we basically started a small business. We kind of do it as a hobby. We both have other jobs. It's a seasonal business, so we're only out there kind of 3 weeks in the season of the year. But it gives us a chance to get out on the land and actually like make a product that we feel good about, and we make a little bit of money doing it. We sell, in terms of the market here, there's a big market. We could produce a lot more and sell it all without too much difficulty within NWT. The tourists, we sell at the visitor center. The farmers market has been amazing in terms of selling product, which gives us, don't have a middleman, so you can have a higher markup, which gives you a little more money. One thing that was talked about, and that I think people can do better, is restaurants. Selling directly to restaurants and having them incorporate northern products in their menus. Yeah. So Lois obviously does that, but there's no reason why a lot of restaurants in NWT they should be selling NWT produced products and vegetables, and fish and meats and things like that. So, and in that vein, one of the things that makes it difficult is regulations, and that's something that maybe health regulations and things like that can stand in the way of especially small producers getting their product into a place where they can sell it. And an example of this is dried fish. It's a great product. I was up in Lissoquet a few years ago and I'm talking to some of the fishers there, and they were saying, well, we make all this dry fish, but we can't actually sell it because of health regulations, because they're not doing it in a proper kitchen, all that kind of stuff. I don't know all the specifics, but they said tourists come and they want to buy stuff, but they can't really sell it to them. So that's something we should potentially look at in terms of how we can get small-scale producers have an ability to sell this food, and how we teach them to get around these regulations and to package food properly and things like that. So I mentioned the market. It is there. Another thing is baskets, like direct sales, like Jackie mentioned. Hasn't been done in Yellowknife. That could be easily done here. And it's not just growing food in gardens. There's basically 4 kinds of food production. We're looking at obviously growing food in gardens. There's harvesting, which is kind of what we do, wild harvesting, called non-timber forest products. And that's morels and wild edibles and syrups and things like that. There's all kinds of stuff from the land that you can collect and harvest and sell. And it's a really good model for small community people, where you can, it's a job that's kind of in line with community rhythms. You're up there seasonally, and you work on the land, and you can bring your stuff back to the community and process it and things like that. It's not full time, so you also have time to go hunting and do the other things. So the other things are fishing and hunting. So with fishing, hunting, growing, and harvesting, we have basically a big breadbasket of foods that we can harvest in the north, and we can make little businesses out of it. It's not rocket science. There's lots of help out there. Business where BDIC will help you start a business. ITI is there for funding. There's lots of opportunity to do this. It can be a little intimidating at first, but it's possible. We're not the first company to be doing this. Karen Hollett had a company called Arctic Wild Harvest a while back, and she produced an amazing variety of products from NWT. And there's a new company, Laughing Lichen, who's doing something similar. One thing I'd like to mention is Aroma Borealis. Some of you might have heard it in Whitehorse. Beverly Gray has produced, she's got a great company there, and she produced a great book called Boreal Herbal a couple of years ago. And if anyone's interested, this book has all the wild herbs and foods and stuff that are grown in NWT, and even in the back it even has a section on how to start your own business. with non-timber forest products, and it's a great resource, and everybody should have it if you're into this kind of thing. So that's all I'm going to say, and yeah, pass it on to John.
I don't know. Can you hear me? Yes? No? Okay. Good morning. As I was introduced and noted in your programs today, my name is John Colford, and I'm Manager of Traditional Economy, Agriculture, and Fisheries for the Department of Industry, Tourism, and Investment. I'm joined today by my Assistant Deputy Minister, Kelly Kalo, as well as I think I saw the North Slave Superintendent Chris Johnson here. Tricia Heron is also here, and Fresco Russo. The group that I share offices with and work with is largely focused on small community economies. We work on the traditional economy, small-time fisheries, agriculture, and that all fits into smaller communities. Along with our daily responsibilities of administering the programs aimed at supporting these sectors, we've been concentrating a lot of effort on 3 significant initiatives, that being the development of an agriculture strategy for the Northwest Territories, a business plan for the commercial fishery of Great Slave Lake, and the little known and not widely publicized Morel mushroom harvest. The work we've been doing in all 3 of these areas is directly connected to the economic opportunity strategy, which we completed in 2013-14. This year. No, 2013-14, and we're in the process of implementing this year. In terms of these 3 initiatives, the EOS was clear. The EOS is the Economic Opportunity Strategy. It was clear in terms of its advice and recommendations. For agriculture, we were directed to do a strategy. We were also directed to provide support so that communities could map out lands, do land mapping and classification to determine what the best soils were for agriculture. We were also directed to do some work in agriculture awareness and do that work in collaboration with TFA and NIFTY. We were also called upon to examine the viability of looking at commercial market gardens in all the regions of the Northwest Territories, as well as conduct research on agriculture and greenhouse technologies. All these things are in place right now, and the funding in order to do these things are all in place right now as well. In terms of the agriculture strategy, just for context, we did a strategy back in 1999-2000. It was called Common Ground. Many of you probably remember it, or some of you may remember it, I don't know. In Common Ground, we had a very brief reference to agriculture. And the reference, I think, called upon government to lower taxes on municipal land and do something about purple gas. And there might have been one other thing in there, but it wasn't significant. And I remember when they were finalizing the document, and they were wondering whether or not to stick it in or not, stick the recommendation in, since it only came from one corner of the Northwest Territories. This wasn't a broad territorial recommendation. There didn't seem to be a whole lot of consensus in it. The decision was to include it in there. We needed something for agriculture, and so we put it in there. Agriculture back in 2000, 2001 was largely concentrated in these 2 communities, 2 or 3 communities. We had backyard gardens in Yellowknife, and we had the odd backyard garden in a variety of other communities, but we didn't have anything organized. In 2005 or 2006, after listening to the debates in the Legislative Assembly between an MLA or a couple of MLAs and a few ministers, the discussion was on high cost of food in the Northwest Territories and whether or not the government should subsidize food costs. My wee little team and I got together and we said, well, we've got some agriculture programming that's not being well utilized, so why don't we take that and change it? And rather than focusing in on 1 or 2 communities, why don't we just blow it up and put it out into the territories and see what happens? And that was when we created the Small Scale Foods Program. The program started off small and it's gone with fits and starts. But I think the first year we had 6 communities, the next year we had 9, it grew to 17, 22. Today we're putting up a greenhouse in Politic. So it's somewhat territorial. We have far more communities involved in some form of agriculture than we had in 2001. And the best evidence of acceptance of agriculture was when we were doing the EOS, and every engagement that we went to in the regions throughout the Northwest Territories, the issue of agriculture came up. And the issue of agriculture came up in a positive context in terms of we need to grow more of our own food. We need to reduce the cost of food in communities. The cost of food is driving up the cost of living. And that gave the impetus to the drafters of the Economic Opportunity Strategy to put in the strategy itself the need for an agriculture strategy. And the strategy will help government direct its resources and energies towards supporting the sector. And we're waiting for the strategy to be done. Today we're in the process of doing engagements in communities. We're starting the discussion about a strategy. And we've gone from Fort Smith and Fort Resolution, and today or yesterday they were in Inuvik, and next week sometime we're going to be, I think on the 26th, we're going to be down here in Yellowknife for 2 or 3 sessions here in Yellowknife. And this is only starting the discussion, and what we hope to do as a result of all these engagements is to prepare what's called a What We Heard document, very similar to the EOS. And that will be circulated throughout the Northwest Territories, probably electronically, we'll do some in print, etc. And we hope that people will gain some insights into the divergent views around agriculture here in the Northwest Territories. This will hopefully lead to a strategy document which will basically provide government with a map in terms of how we make future investments in the sector. We are looking forward to this exercise and looking forward to this work optimistically. I think the time is right for it. It obviously wasn't right back in 2001, but I think given the interest that exists across the Northwest Territories today, I think the time is right to definitely do the strategy now. And so I'm looking very much forward to it. Okay, from the strategy, this whole exercise in terms of the agriculture strategy, we hope that we will come up with a document that serves northern needs as they've been identified to us over the course of the last several years, especially in the EOS. And those needs that I understand or have taken away from the Economic Opportunity Strategy is we need to grow more food for northern markets. We need to reduce our cost of food. And we need a sustainable agriculture sector in support of sustainable communities. And I think that's, for me, forms the basis upon which we build an agriculture strategy. If we start at that point, then we move forward. In terms of the fisheries, Sam was right. Sam brought up a lot of good points today. In fact, Sam could have done this. But we are looking at doing a business plan with the commercial fishermen on Great Slave Lake. The work is nearly complete, and we're meeting with the fishermen on the 28th in Hay River to go over this business plan. The aim of the business plan is to look at the construction of a new plant, or the construction of a new plant and related infrastructure on Great Slave Lake so that fishers can take more advantage of mobility around the lake. Today, they're dealing strictly in the area of Hay River. These are the export fishers. They don't have the mobility they once had. They've lost that. The current plant facilities are owned by the Freshwater Fish Marketing Corporation. The plan calls for a change in that. The plan calls for a number of things that are going to dramatically change this fishery and hopefully cause this fishery to come back to the way it was 10, 15 years ago when this fishery produced 2.2, 2.3, 2.4 million pounds of fish. And yes, Sam's correct. We were shipping, the fish is largely being shipped to Southern markets. One of the things that we've picked up on over the past 2 or 3 years is the attractiveness of the domestic commercial market for fish. We know we've got an excellent product. There's no question about it, we do. And when we surveyed the stores, or we did this in 2011 with Cal Communications. We did an assessment of the domestic commercial market, and we found that so very little of our fish was actually being sold in the Northwest Territories or being utilized in the Northwest Territories by Northerners. We tried to figure out, okay, what's the size of the potential market, and it was difficult to determine, but the estimate was is that the market would consume somewhere between 300,000 and 400,000 kilograms of fish. It's a large pile of fish. And so that all these, that started coming into the equation in terms of the future viability of a commercial fishery. Because when you rely on southern markets, you're dealing with circumstances and situations which are often beyond your control. For example, our fishery over the past 10 years has been heavily hit, or hard hit by things like a global meltdown in the economy, weakening of currencies. Recently, the embargo on export of freshwater fish to Russia. All these things we have very little influence over. Our fishermen can't change those influences. I don't think our government can change those influences. These are things that are beyond our control. If we can take a greater advantage of the northern market in terms of fish products, we lessen our dependence on the export market. The export market is still important, but we lessen our dependence on it. We find new market avenues into the Northwest Territories. We make sure that instead of simply feeding or serving 3 markets, that being Hay River, Fort Smith, and Yellowknife, we're actually serving all the markets in the Northwest Territories. Because we know from the general reception that we're getting, or the reaction we're getting for northern fish in the 3 markets that are currently being served, we know that sentiment is going to carry all the way through the north. And we know we can put product into Northern Wells, we know we can put product into Inuvik, we can put product into the Clouded, Fort McPherson, etc. So we think that the domestic commercial market is a market that's quite worthwhile to look at and possibly incorporate into this plan. We will continue marketing and promoting the domestic commercial market, even though we recognize today there are issues about security of supply. We hope that that will improve too as we move forward with this plan. Today, the commercial quota on the lake, I believe, is 3.2 million pounds of fish, and we are only utilizing a fraction of that. 2003, 2004, I think our fishers took 2.2 to 2.3 million pounds of fish in both the summer and the winter. This year, last year we only had a summer fishery, and we've only had a summer fishery for the past, I think, 6 or 7 years. We'd like to see that fishery revitalized. We'd like to see that fishery made more viable. We think the incomes and the jobs that it generates are important for the north. We think the money that's spent in the north is important for northern communities as well. Finally, the marrow mushrooms, my favorite topic. So much attention around some fungus, it just blows me away. The EOS was clear, not with respect to marrow mushrooms, it didn't know, but the EOS was clear. In order for northerners to take advantage of opportunities, they must first be made aware of the opportunity, and second, they must understand what it is and be prepared to take advantage of it. For those who are not aware, morel mushrooms are an outcome of forest fires. The Northwest Territories saw pretty significant forest fire activity last year. 34,000 square kilometers of forested lands, largely around the Great Slave Lake, were burned up. Based upon work we carried out in the Deschaux region the previous summer, we undertook, with support from the Canada NWT Growing Forward 2 agreement, the task of readying northerners in the Deschaux communities for potential opportunity. A number of residents in the Deschaux took advantage of it, and there were benefits that arose as a result of it. Income was earned. So leading up to this year, we started work back in October, and we did information sessions in 19 information sessions in 12 communities around the lake, involving upwards of 1,200 people. We produced a harvester's guide as well as a harvester's handbook. We put this information on the website, all in the effort of preparing people for an opportunity. If people choose to take advantage of the opportunity, they have that information available to them to proceed. If they choose not to, then that's a conscious decision not to proceed. It's better that they choose not to proceed as opposed to figuring out afterwards that something happened and they weren't aware of it. We didn't want to be in that situation. Today we're fielding upwards of 50 phone calls every day, and it's brisk and it's busy. We're also holding what we refer to as walking workshops. Once the morels start popping up out of the ground, these workshops will be taking place starting Kikiza probably early next week. These will start in Kikiza and move north to Bernard Burn sites in Jean Moraine, the Shan Lake area, and then move on to the Cleancho. And we're looking at it, there's some discussion about it's okay. The key ingredient to the morel harvest was finally delivered last evening in the form of rain, and I'm eternally grateful to the rain gods for arranging that event. I've already thanked the minister responsible for the environment. I sleep better at night. The morel harvest will provide significant income opportunities for Northerners in Armagnac. Was and remains to make sure that Northerners have the opportunity to participate. With that, I'll close. Thank you very much.
I think we've got time for a couple of questions, because we do have to break for lunch. So, questions from the floor. Doug Whiteman.
Yeah, to Sam, I was wondering with all this fish trapping he's got, looks like about 3,000 pounds a month, and not that everybody's wanting to put fish on their garden, but of course your gardening right now, could it not be just frozen into blocks, or like ground into meal, frozen into blocks, and then pot in the fall and spread on the garden, or maybe even dried and put into bags that can be spread out easily whenever? Could be just...
Yeah, the frozen block idea.
Maybe speak into the mic, please, Sam.
Yeah. The frozen block idea was already tried by accident. Where I left scraps outside. No one came to pick them up. So.
Did you grind it up, Sam, like into meal, or was it just frozen block?
I believe the dog mushers do that. They grind it up into meal, or they cook it and mix it with their other food.
I was just wondering, maybe you could do that as part of your operation, where now you might have a greater response for people wanting it. It was already ground, easier to work with, right?
Yeah, a pre-ground mash would certainly mix much better in with like a sheep manure or your other fertilizing agents. But the other one about the fish slime, in the frozen fish slime, we often do that just because we don't want to throw it out. We just take the frozen block and just put it in the garden, and in the spring melt, it would just dissipate into the soil. But there again, you're over-fertilizing and you get only one plant wanting to grow in it. Yeah.
Another question, Dennis, did you have a question?
Just a question about the fishery, and with the fish that are not sold commercially, are they still thrown on the ice, or is there any possibility of using those fish for? Is there any way we could see that would be part of a harvest as well for the fishermen, so that there wouldn't be a waste, it would be something that could be used in some other way?
Are you putting the question to me?
Yeah.
Oh, sure. I'm not a fisherman, and I've never gone out to the fish nets. So fishermen will tell me that it's against the law to waste fish, and I have to hold them to it. But if there is college, as we call it, I think we are, without getting into too many of the details of the plan, which has proprietary information for the fishermen, we have something incorporated in there that would probably assist that in that issue.
I think maybe Sam could add to that.
Yeah, your concern is actually quite valid, because I won't name the fishers that tell me of their techniques of making fish disappear. there's some methods where they actually sink the fish. And what they end up doing is, because the fish are unsuitable for market sale, they in effect let those fish sink to the bottom, and then the cod eat them. So it goes back into the fish ecosystem. But more often than not, the bycatch, which is fishes they can't sell, or that are just, it's either fish that have been scavenged on by seagulls or other animals while they're in their nets. They would be transported to their secret locations where a great many eagles and wolves would have a feast. But that is another potential for a biomass that's underutilized for sure.
I need to say one thing that I totally forgot. I do have to say. What we need to implement as quickly as possible in the Northwest Territories is a special abattoir, small-scale abattoir licensing program that has been implemented in northern BC, where they grant, depending on the facility, for communities 10 to 35 animal units, so that, just like the reference to right now, beef and pigs are highly regulated. And this would immediately allow small-scale, local domestic animal producers the legal ability to raise and slaughter their animals in their community for their community market. And this would take pressure off of our wild animals, like the caribou, that we want to be able to give a rest to. But we need to replace that meat in our food chain. So.
Thank you. Doug, I think the final question to you, and then we'll take a lunch break.
Okay, it was just a response to the question about the poor quality or wasted fish. My wife's team were commercial fishers on Winnipeg basis. And I fished with them, and of course they were always looking for jackfish. At that time, it was getting around 70 cents a pound, but they were also keeping all the suckers and damaged fish. I asked them why. They said, well, we get about 1.50 cents, 2 cents a pound for it. And I said, well, what do they do with it? They said, send it south, gets made into fertilizer. But at least that was the response they gave me. They kept it all. They didn't throw anything away. And they got a very low pay for it, but it was better than nothing. If you throw it away, you're getting nothing, but if you took it away, you got paid something for it.
Right. Thank you, Doug. 1:15. I invite you to take lunch, come back, and we're going to hear from the Honorable Michael Miltenberger, who is going to speak to us about building localized economies. So grab your lunch, back to your seats, and we'll be hearing from the minister.
That's exactly where we got our really love this. Well, that's awesome. I think you guys will come like in a week or so, like you'll be on the next batch. Yeah, they're so young, it's for me to ship them. Our first batch came up from Alberta.
Can't get around it sometimes.
Yeah. I just look at our box.
They're cut you off there, but yeah.
I love the place so much. We're going to do a place just get right into the job.
And then if you have stuff back home, it's
Well, it's a nice way to keep it. At least it's a place people do. Yes, sometimes go
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. You run these out for stereo bus, and then plug that into the stereo bed. Yeah.
Plug in the bands, wait, that's the
So it's there. It needs to go from there to there if you want to use this one.
No, I don't. Like a stereo. Just make sure the controller is stereo.
Which is what, yeah, that's what it's all about.